My dad was like falling asleep and he just hears something whisper directly into his ear, "Wake up." And he was like, "Okay, well, I'm sleeping with a gun beside me for the rest of the night." Again, what are you going to do with a gun in a haunted fucking house? Good luck.
Oh, no way. Oh my god! No way! Oh my god!
Hey everybody, and welcome to Chiller Chatters 6. It is me, Cromulent Jesse. Welcome back. I hope you guys enjoyed the block of game show episodes and your holidays were great. Your new year is going wonderfully, and let's dive into 2024 like it's going out of style already. So, we reached out to you, the listeners, and we asked, do you guys have any creepy stories, any paranormal, any unidentified flying objects, anything your heart desired? And some of you came forward and wanted to tell stories that, really kind of shook Greg and I to the core. You won't really hear Greg and I in these stories. We sort of sat back and listened. It was a really enjoyable time to kind of get to hang out with some of you and hear some of these really creepy stories. We have some people, if you're from the Discord and hang out there, that you'll recognize. We do have one anonymous story, and we do have a fellow streamer, and it's Kristen A, who tells a couple stories actually today, and then one person who's been on the show before, and Nick. So we'll kind of introduce those stories as they come, and I'm really excited. I'm going to tell you guys a little story of my own first, but let me get the business out of the way. You guys know how to support us. Just go to serialchillerspod.com. All the ways you can listen, all the ways you can support the show, all the ways you can find us. It's all there. You guys can always call or text the show 1-805-666-2513. That is available to you anytime. Greg and I should answer. You can call too, leave voicemails. I don't think it really even rings, but we get the texts instantly. So check it out, man. And as mentioned before, the Discord, if you guys are interested in hanging out with the people who create the show, the people who hang out around the show, the names you hear a lot, that is what the Discord is for. If you have questions about the Discord, you just don't get it, there is a Discord help section in the Discord, but if you haven't even gotten that far, let us know. We'll definitely kind of narrow down and give you some help. Reach out to us in any other way. So, my ghost story. I was about 19 years old, and we had several friends who were into, they called it legend tripping. Basically, they would find quote unquote legends in our area, and they would want to go and do those things. So some legends, you guys might be familiar with, like if you park on the railroad tracks and leave it in neutral, you'll get pushed over the railroad tracks and there'll be hands on the back of your car. We didn't have anything specifically like that, but there were ones where if you went at a certain place at a certain time, you got a certain result. And that was the idea of what these few friends that I had like to do. And I would tag along every now and again because I like to be creeped out. Now, if you guys know me, I'm a little bit of a skeptic and I don't necessarily believe always, but I'm willing to look into things for sure. And this night we went out to a park in Kerman, California called Kearney Park. Now, Kearney Park, very mild-mannered during the day. It is a place where families hang out. It is a beautiful place. It has an old estate on it called the Kearney Mansion, and supposedly the Kearney Mansion is haunted. So this night started with us going to view the Kearney Mansion in the evening. So once it was closed, we weren't going to break in or anything. We just wanted to go and kind of peek in windows when it was dark. So we went and we did that, and it was fairly uneventful. And I want to say there were 7 or 8 of us when this started. So after the mansion, one of the vehicles left. So there were 4 people in that vehicle, and they took off. So the remaining 4, we were still pretty high on wanting to be thrilled. So we just walked around this super dark, super supposedly active park at night. Now, we understood that in the area there were homeless people. There are other people doing what we do, just showing up at a park and hanging out late at night. So with that being said, we, everything sort of had a veil over it. We wanted to believe, but there's too much real and too too much opportunity for people to be there. So we walked around the park for a while, and just as we thought, fairly uneventful. And as we headed back to the car, a very large park. Now, when I say park, I think some people envision a small neighborhood park. This is a park where it's hundreds of acres and you can walk a mile from your car. And that's what we had done. We were probably about a mile from our car. This park is the size of a city block, and we were on the other side. So we start walking back, and it had been really quiet. Like, when I say uneventful, we didn't run into anybody. And as we're walking back, suddenly, out of nowhere, off in the distance, we can hear what sounds like a giant pack of dogs barking. And coyotes aren't out of the question. So it was something that came to mind first. Now, that's not exactly the most threatening thing in the world. We were 4 pretty big dudes, and I don't think a pack of coyotes was coming at us. But just to hear them in the distance, but still pretty close, was a little unnerving. And we kind of all caught attention, and the pack started moving. The sound started moving towards us. And at this time, I think we kind of huddled together almost back to back, like a movie style, like watching all directions, because it seemed like the sound was coming from all directions. And suddenly the sounds began getting far closer, far faster than it appeared that they could. And again, it sounded as if they were coming from all directions. Now, this wasn't like an auditory hallucination or phenomenon that just I was experiencing. Clearly, the other 3 people I was with were also hearing the dogs barking and hearing them approaching closer. And it got close and close. And suddenly they were so close that we definitely should have seen something. And then all the barking stopped. And it was like a scene in a movie. The 4 of us were back to back to back to back, and the barking stops, and we were just standing there, and everybody's going, just breathing deep and freaked out, and the adrenaline on ultra high. We walked back to the car, and in between where we were and where we ended up at the car, nothing happened again. And to this day, I couldn't explain to you why it sounded like 40 dogs were running at us from all directions, and then it suddenly stopped. It could have just been dogs that we never saw, and then they suddenly stopped. But it seemed like someone snapped their fingers, and the dog barking stopped. So that's kind of my only real, I guess, claim to paranormal feeling. Again, could have just been a pack of dogs that I didn't get eyes on in the dark, but it definitely felt a little more, let's say, sinister than that. So thanks for listening to my story. We're going to go on here to Cole. Cole is a longtime listener of the show, and he told us he had a ghost story he wanted to tell, and Greg and I were interested. So take it away, Cole.
So I'm sure you guys know that, or if you've been around this, you know that kids are a lot more susceptible to kind of paranormal activity and that type of shit. So that being said, my grandpa passed away when I was 7 of lung cancer, and my parents are separated, so my mom worked a full-time job, and I used to spend entire summers at my grandma's house because me and my grandma were homies, so she had no problem with it. And the way her house is, she lives in the middle of fucking nowhere, and the road is really far from the house. The driveway is also kind of far from the house. Like I said, also in the middle of nowhere, so there's no way anybody coming up the driveway or down the road could have been a factor in this story. But what I used to do is I used to spend the summers there, and I'd be, outside fucking around on my quad or shooting BB guns or playing PS2 or whatever, and then at the end of the night, I'd always come in and we'd watch her game shows. She'd watch like Wheel of Fortune, Twilight Zone, whatever. And I fell asleep on the couch, and I woke up, and I'm like looking around for a minute because I didn't remember falling asleep, so I was kind of confused. I woke up with a blanket on me, and she had left the oven light on for me, but that was it. I like sit up and look around, and I see this fucking ball of light just dart across the wall, and I'm like, well, what in the fuck was that? And it does it again going the other way, and I'm like super confused because I was like 7, 8 years old. I don't know what the hell it was, and I just didn't ever think of it again. But hearing it now or thinking about it later, I was kind of like, oh shit, that was a little weird. But that's the only thing that happened in the first one. Second one, I don't remember. It also takes place at my grandma's house. I don't remember if it was the same year or the year after, but I was going to bed. I made it upstairs this time, and I had a bunk bed. Even though I was an only child on my mom's side. I had a bunk bed, and of course I'm sleeping in the top bunk, and I'm laying there in at her house, like I said, in the middle of nowhere, but also has against the back of the house. There's no trees, no bushes, no nothing, and I'm on the second floor. She also doesn't have any central air or central heat. Again, nothing. It was just fans and window AC units, which I had none of those on. And I'm sitting there, I'm trying to fall asleep, and I hear what sounds to be like labored breathing under me, and I'm like thinking about it for a second because I'm like 7, and I'm like, what in the hell could that be? Thinking about it, and the more I'm sitting there listening to it, it sounds like somebody breathing. And there is no way in hell I'm gonna peek my ass over the top of that top bunk to see what it is. So I'm yelling for my grandma, and she's like 20 feet down the hallway in her bedroom, and it takes a couple minutes to get there. Meanwhile, I'm like, terrified. And she's like, well, what's going on? I'm like, I think there's something in here, but either way, that would have been even scarier if there was something or if there wasn't something. So she's like, she humored me. She like looked around, flipped the light on. I'm like, well, she's like, well, there's nothing here. I'm like, okay, then what the hell did I hear? And she's like, I don't know, just try and ignore it. And she left, and that was the end of it. Never heard it again. So those are the ones I had at her house. Keep in mind, my grandpa passed away at this house, so I'd like to believe that was him, but either way, it was kind of scary.
All right, that was cool. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate that story. Now, if you are in the Discord, you know that there are plenty of members who are very active. This next member is one of them. Jax-a-lantern is constantly in the Discord. She's a cake decorator. She's a wonderful person. And she also had a spooky tale to tell us.
So I live in a very active house, and things have been happening really since I was in elementary school. Um, Before anything happened here, the first like real introduction that my family had into like paranormal things going on was my dad used to work at a truck company, and he would sell truck parts. And one of his regular customers called in and left a voicemail for what they needed. And then at the end of the voicemail, there was like clicking. And then it went into this really like forced, hushed, it was like an androgynous voice because you couldn't really tell if it was like a man or a woman. And okay, so it said, Mother, did she not apologize, but does not know what she said? Tell Julie she is loved. So Julie's my mom, and we still don't know. Like I just remember this is when cell phones were not as apparent as they are in the world, and my dad called us and was like really confused and like kind of freaked out because it was really fucking weird, and he called us. We ended up going and we recorded it on our little Virgin Mobile Oyster phones. So I can like saying it, I can hear it back in the voice, and that's how I could remember what it said because I've heard it so many times. But it was really weird. And it was kind of like a really like voice, which just makes it even weirder. But yeah, we still never know anything about that. That actually almost got my mom and dad onto the oh my God, the Montel show. And we almost talked to Sylvia Brown and everything, but that was literally right when it was ending. So they canceled that happening. So that's pretty cool. That was kind of our intro into all of the weird things that happen here on really a regular basis. Um, One of the first things that I remember happening that I experienced was when I was in probably like, late elementary, early middle school. My best friend and I were having a sleepover, and, we're staying up all night doing crafts, eating snacks, partying as middle schoolers do. And we we were looking for something in the fridge, and the way my house is set up, the fridge is right at the top of the stairs for the basement. And my basement's always just been really creepy All of the dogs, even to this day, my dog will not go down there. They don't fuck with the basement. Um, so we're standing there looking in the fridge, trying to figure out what we're gonna make. And you know how the sound of your parents walking in their room, like you memorize that because then like if you're up at night and you hear that, you're like, oh shit, I gotta pretend to sleep. They're coming. So she heard it before I heard it. And I thought, she goes, oh, we're going to get in trouble. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then I like listened and I could hear footsteps coming from the basement. And now this was like, it was like 3 to 4 in the morning. Like it was really late. We always would try to stay up all night. And it was fucking scary. So we looked at each other and it was weird because like at the bottom of the stairs, it started out quieter and like softer. And as it got up towards the top of the stairs, and it wasn't going fast, like it was like a normal person's casual pace up the stairs, it got louder and it got heavier. And it was so fucking scary. We looked at each other and I was like, that's not my fucking parents. And we ran into my room, just aborted the whole mission. And we ended up staying in my room the rest of that night because we were too scared. And the next day, I told my parents about it because it was scary. And my dad told us, so he makes spaghetti and salsa and like the sauce, and he was up really late canning it the month before this. And he like the look on his face when I explained it to him, just like sheer terror because he's just like, so that happened to me about a month ago, and I didn't want to tell any of you because I didn't want to scare you guys, but he thought that someone was in our house and he like timed it to where they would have been at the top of the stairs because like I said, it got heavier and louder, and he like flipped the switch on and was going to try and punch the intruder, but there was literally nobody fucking there. So he wasn't going to tell us about it until I brought it up. So now that's happened a couple of times. It hasn't happened for a long time, but it's still scary. My mom and my sister do ghost hunting stuff, and I've been like getting into it. So I got an SLS camera and we went downstairs with it, and like there was totally a shape, like looked like it's sitting on the middle of the floor in the basement. So, do a little ghost boxing stuff in the house and get a lot of answers, which is fun. But that's the first thing I remember. One of the weirdest things that's happened, because that's not weird enough, but it was nighttime. I think I was in high school when this happened. I was taking a shower and my parents were in bed and my sister was in her room. It's the room I'm in right now. And it's creepy. um, the bathroom's right next to her room. My parents' room's at the end of the hallway. Mine's in the middle. So I get out of the shower and I come out of the bathroom and I was looking at the ground and I don't know, I just like didn't look up or anything, but like I looked at the end of the hallway right in their doorway and I swear to fucking God, I saw bare feet, but it wasn't like it was like cloudy. So like it was like literally like if you imagine ghost feet, like normal human feet, just like see-through and like opaque, that's what it fucking looked like. And I saw that shit and I fucking ran into my sister's room because it was right there. And I was like, you'll never guess or believe what I just saw. And I told her, and I just hung out in here because I was fucking scared. And then I ended up finally, after a couple of hours, running to my room because I got up enough courage. But I told my parents the next day. And so we used to have a black lab and Springer mix. His name was Tippy. And he was a really good dog. But every once in a while, he would get really scared and start like shaking and like whimpering and shit. And it ended up that when that was happening, my parents had heard me come out of the bathroom. Right before that happened, Tippy was like getting scared and like kind of freaking out a little bit in there. And like I said, like they were sleeping or trying to sleep, like the door was open but the lights were off and all that. And they heard the same kind of voice that the voicemail had, but like hushed tip, tip from the fucking doorway as I was coming out of the bathroom and saw these fucking feet. Literally, it was like they were facing their doorway and I saw them as they turned. And then I don't know if they like disappeared or I just ran before that. I got the fuck out of there, so I don't know. But it was so crazy. Like we all experienced it in a different like lens, but the same fucking thing. And like I don't know, I like have goosebumps talking about that because that was really weird. There's just so many things. I'll tell you one more because I feel like we're really getting into it. But so my mom has had major back surgery. She's had two now, but this was her first one. And I think I was in elementary school, I'd say like maybe fifth grade. And she had a bed in the living room. So when people would come over to visit, she could sit out there and like be comfortable and like, you know, hang out with them and all of that. So I was coming out of my room to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and on my way back, we have like a doorway from the hall that like you can see the living room. And I usually like, because you know, it's creepy, you feel the vibes sometimes. I don't like to look around too much. I just go to where I'm going and then I go back and you know, it's fine. But for some reason, I got this like feeling of like, I'm gonna go look out in the living room. Why not? So I went over there and I like peeked around the corner and I was just like looking. And at the very end of the bed, like at the foot of the bed, facing forward from that way. So like it wasn't looking at me, but like if you were sitting on the end of the bed and you were just looking forward, there was like a misty, opaque, cloudy kind of like literally like a person shape perfectly sitting on a bed. And I saw that shit and I was like, all right. And then I just went to my room because what the fuck else am I supposed to do? So like, I don't know. There's just a lot of really weird shit that's happened. I have so many more stories, but those are like the top ones. And yeah, I don't know. Ghosts are spooky, but they're not always scary.
Thank you, Jax. I can't wait to hear more stories and more ghost boxing tales and things like that in the future. So this person here, if you're a fan of the show, you are familiar with. If you were a fan of myself when I streamed primarily, you will be familiar with her. If you are just a friend of mine, you will be familiar with her. This is actually one of two stories she's got on the show tonight, but they're not going to be back to back. So it's Kristen A on Twitch is her Twitch tag. If you want to go watch her stream, she does great work. But she also had a ghost story and a UFO story for us. So take it away, Kristen.
So quite some years ago now, I lived in an area that's considered a hotspot for unidentified flying objects. And to that, there are a lot of planes in the area. Sure. There's a helicopter school nearby. But this particular day, me and a friend were out walking. We were hiking up a mountain. And I thought I was looking towards the sun. And they thought they were looking towards the sun, but we were both facing slightly different directions. So then when they turned around and saw I was kind of not facing the same way they were like, wait a minute. And we both started to look and we kind of like, you know, like changed the way we were facing and stuff. And we looked and there was an orb in the sky that shared like an equal amount, what seemed like an equal amount of light with the sun. Like it would seem just as bright as the sun. And it wasn't really moving. It seemed incredibly stationary. And we stood there for a while and just looked because we were both like, are we tripping out or something? Like what is going on here? And then it kind of moved around in a bit of like what seemed like a circle. and both of us are just standing there, and it seemed to go on for a very long time, what was happening. And we both started looking around, like, are there planes around? Could it be a helicopter? And we're kind of talking to each other as we're kind of standing there. And it was not a helicopter, because it was like as bright as the sun. Like, helicopters are not as bright as the sun. We're used to seeing them in that area, middle of the day. And it was a bit away from the sun. So it wasn't like it was on the opposite side, but it was you could see both at the same time if you turned the right way, you know? And then just as quickly as it happened and it appeared, poof, gone. Just like that. Just like instantaneously out of there. And so that was like a really weird experience. We both kind of sat there and talked about it for a minute, because we had to both go over the fact that was not a helicopter. We had to talk about it for a minute because it was just really weird.
Okay. Kristen, a wonderful tale. We're going to split Kristen's up a little bit here because we have something that sort of goes along with that. If you listen to the show back in the day, we had longtime listeners Getty and Nick on to compete a couple times, and they're always a good time. We always had a lot of fun, laughed super hard. We linked back up with Nick after putting this call to paranormal and creepy stories out, and Nick said he had a short one for us. It was short, but boy, did it really land. So check it out.
All right. So my story takes place in McCall, Idaho. I think it was mid 2000s. No, actually late 90s. It was like 98. It's the Rainbow Festival, which for those of you who don't know, it's a big hippie festival with music. It's like a 3-day thing. Burning Man before Burning Man was a thing. It was coming through town, and I randomly met some hippies that were going to the festival. And so I was like a hippie impersonator, basically. I was like a punk rocker hippie. I didn't fit in with either category, but I liked both. So I was hanging out with these hippie guys that were going to the festival, and we were all getting loaded. And my parents were out of the house, so I was like, cool, come over. We'll drink at my house. We'll smoke some weed. It'll be a great time. And we're sitting there, and we're like, there's like the kitchen bar that separates the kitchen from the dining room, and we're sitting there, we're hanging out, and we're all drinking. And one of the hippies is like, hey, I heard this story about how to summon aliens. And so we're sitting there, and we're like, how do we do it? And so we got like this, we had this big ass crystal, some tin foil, and we did all this stupid shit, and we did some like chanting and some like we were all super faded. And there was like this part where we had to really concentrate on getting on each other's wavelengths, like mentally. And we're sitting there, and we're like all super quiet. And then all of a sudden, we all open our eyes at the same time, and the entire room, just one bright green light flashes through the entire room. We all saw the same thing. And I don't know what it was, but like the green light happened, and I was looking out the back window in the back of my mom's house. Is like a little forest area back there, and the trees were kind of just shaking, and that's all it was. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't like big crazy things, but there was definitely something entered that room and fucked with all of our heads for just a teeny second. So it's a short story. I tried to stretch it to 5 minutes, but that's what I got for you guys today.
All right. Thank you, Nick. I always appreciate a story about trippy crystals, aliens, and hippies. Can never go wrong. Thank you, Nick. So we're going to take a step away from things coming out of the sky and jump back into another Kristen story here about perhaps a spirit that haunts a family restaurant.
So my family used to own a little cafe, and my grandma had several sisters and a brother. And then one day, and the sisters, a couple of the sisters also worked in the cafe, and on and off through the years. But this story has to do with the one that actually committed suicide. And growing up, she was very young when she passed. I was very young, and she was actually pretty young when she passed. So in the restaurant, she used to really hate it if you did things like left the knife in the butter, or like things, just weren't in their place and stuff like that. And my mom and me lived upstairs in the little apartment upstairs. And there was also an intercom that went through to downstairs. And it used to really freak my mom out because sometimes, like, you know, like someone would forget to pull the knife out of the butter before kind of closing up for the day or something. And you would get downstairs in the morning and it wasn't like the knife would be like kind of fallen from the butter. It would be on the other side of like where you would keep the knives, like away from the butter, and it would be on the table, like, you know, still covered in butter, but like on like away from the butter, like someone took it out and slammed it on the counter, like, nope, this doesn't belong in the butter. There was also one night where several times actually, you could hear like talking downstairs through the intercom. So the intercom wasn't always on. You had to push a button to have it on. There was definitely nobody down there. In fact, 1 or 2 times my mom went down to see if someone had broken in, you know, and there wouldn't be anybody there. But we definitely would hear like very hushed, like quiet, almost whispering, but just enough that sometimes you can make out words, you know, like, but not the whole sentence. Like you would hear like a word come through here or there, but yeah, you would have to push a button to start that too. So it was always weird when the intercom would turn on for zero reason at all. It was very popular in the cafe for knives to be moved if they were left in proper places at nighttime. And my mom and my grandma and one of my other aunts was always just like, it was my grandma's sister. Like that was it. They were convinced because when she was alive, she would pull the knives out of butter. She would put the knives away, or she'd put, she just, put them in the dishwasher and stuff. Of course, they didn't ended up in the dishwasher, but like they would be moved out of where they weren't supposed to be. And the talking, and I remember several times, like when I was young, my mom would be like, oh no, someone broke in downstairs. Go downstairs, nobody there. Plus they would have to push the button for the intercom. And why someone breaking in would push the button for the intercom and start being like, whisper, 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 whisper. That'd be very strange, right? So yeah, that was kind of, that was the thing when I was growing up, that my great aunt was still somewhere in the restaurant cleaning up after us or fixing things that she didn't think was right. And probably the whispers, my mom figures, was her complaining about the fact that we didn't put things away properly, kind of like her spirit, some part of her spirit was attached there and still working away with the rest of the family. There you go. That's my ghost story.
Thank you, Kristen. That's one of the ones where it doesn't seem so scary. It's just nice to know someone's still around checking on you, So this final story comes from an anonymous viewer and listener. They wanted to keep their identity clear, and we are absolutely accepting of that because, the internet is a weird fucking place to be. So this anonymous storyteller kind of blew us away with the story that they brought. It's kind of why it's headlining here. You will have heard her at the intro as well. So this story really kind of captured our imagination. It really creeped us out. It sent chills down our spines a couple times while we were listening, and we really appreciate that. And I know you guys will too. So check out this story from an anonymous listener.
Okay, so whenever I was younger, grew up living in a house with my grandparents. So it was the family of 5, and then my grandparents in this 3-bedroom house. So my great aunt had passed away, and my dad inherited her house. So we moved in whenever I was probably around 6 or something. And the first sighting in that house, I mean, it was a great house. Like, we were excited to move in there. We were excited, little kids picking out our bedrooms. It was a dream come true. We got to paint the room whatever color we wanted. So very excited from that standpoint. And I was probably in 1st or 2nd grade, and I was really, really excited about an outfit I was going to wear to school the next day. And I was so excited I could barely sleep. So I woke up in the middle of the night, and this was the first time I saw anything. I was just playing with my hair in the mirror, and the way that my bedroom was set up was we had bed on one side of the wall, and then directly behind me was the threshold leading out into the hallway. Very short hallway, but I was looking into the mirror, and I see this girl. She's full body apparition, super solid. And she was dressed up like a ballerina, hair up and everything. It was like a purpley pink outfit she was wearing. And her back was towards the mirror, and she just does like a slow 180, kind of like a ballerina spin, and looks at me. And at the time, I'd never thought about ghosts. I'd never seen anything. I'd never heard about anything. And I just look for a second, not scared, but I turn around and look into the hallway. There's nothing there. There's nobody. My sister was in the top bunk above me. I know it wasn't her. I had an older brother at the time, and he was in the bedroom across the hall. His door was shut, and it was just my parents on the other side of the house. It couldn't have been anybody, but I get out of bed. I do like a couple of double takes into the mirror and then back, and I'm still not seeing anything. I go out into the hallway and just check the closet, and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? So I run back to my bed, and I fall asleep with the covers over me for the rest of the night. The next morning, I tell my mom, I saw someone in the hallway last night. I think it was a ghost. And my mom laughed at me. She's like, there's no such thing as ghost. Little did I know she was just saying that to protect me. But all I said was there was a girl in the hallway. And about a week later, my sister was like, so I was in the kitchen the other day, and I saw someone in the parents' room, which was just adjacent to the kitchen. And she starts describing this girl. She's like, she looked like a ballerina. She had on a pink purpley outfit, and she had a bun up and with brown hair. Is that who you saw? And I was like, holy shit, that's exactly who I saw. So I'd never told my sister these details, but the cat started like staring into my parents' room, and that's what alerted my sister to go look into my parents' room. But really, this is pretty much just going to be like a couple vignettes of stories of things that happened in this house, and some are slightly more aggressive than others. But that was the first time I saw her. I never saw her again. But we lived in that house from the time I was 6 or 7, and we moved out whenever I was 15 or 16 or something. So a couple occurrences happened whenever we were just doing the dishes. So I didn't mind doing the dishes, but I would always do them at night whenever it was dark, and we had a farm, like a ranch style house where it's just one level, and just over the kitchen sink there's a window. And at night, the window looks completely pitch black. We lived out in the country, so I could see my reflection in the window pretty well. And one time I was doing the dishes, and the kitchen wall was probably 7 or 8 feet just behind me. I could see a large dark shadow up against the kitchen wall. And it was inside of our utility closet. So I knew that it wasn't anything that was on the wall. I knew that it was just a big shadow, kind of silhouette on that door. And I just stared at it while I was doing the dishes. I didn't want to like lose eye contact from looking at this shadow. I didn't want it to go anywhere. I just continued to do the dishes. Eventually I looked away. I looked back into the reflection, and it wasn't there anymore. That was creepy. That kind of gave me like the red flag feeling inside. But my sister has also seen that shadow while she was doing the dishes on an occasion. And everybody hated doing the dishes. I think it was because the kitchen, there was definitely something in the kitchen. I was the only one who would do the dishes, but my sister did them a couple of times. But not only did she see the shadow, but she saw it right behind her. If you could imagine, like hands around someone's neck, like they're gonna pretend like to choke you. my sister thought it was my brother playing a joke on her. So she starts to turn around and say his name. And when she does, there's no one there behind her. And she called me. She was like, get in here. I'm not doing these dishes alone. So I had to like stay with her for the rest of the time while she was doing the dishes. But there was another time where she looked up into the reflection of that window and just saw a really, really bright light behind her. And all I heard was her like drop a plate and it shatter in the sink. So it was just a really, really creepy to do the dishes by yourself. Probably the moment, it was one of the most unexplainable things that has ever happened to me in my entire life. So just to let you know where I'm at mentally, I'm an engineer, so I'm very like fact-based. I'm very like fact-driven. I always try to talk myself off of a ledge whenever it comes to, oh, did that really happen? Type moments. But we were, as a family, no one was in the house. We had an alarm on in the house and everything, but there's no way this could have ever happened. But we were coming into the house. My dad goes to unlock the door. We were coming home from church. And as soon as he opens up the door, we hear a huge crash inside of the house. And my dad goes running in. So is my brother. The rest of us follow. But we had one of those like 35 or 40-inch big back TVs. It took my dad and my brother to pick up this TV, and it was on a TV stand made of glass. So we walk into the living room. This TV is face down. It is face down on the floor. There's nothing wrong with the TV stand. The TV is just completely face down on the floor, untouched, not broken, still worked perfectly fine. And my dad is just like, okay, help me get the TV back up, and acting like nothing happened. And it's like, you gotta be kidding. The TV definitely fell off as we were walking into the house. Something wanted us to know that it can move a large ass television that takes two grown men to move. And for years after this occurrence happened, I would walk into the living room and I would find the TV shifted in any direction. So I know this isn't like a floor level issue. In any direction, it would be shifted an inch or two off of the TV stand, and I would have to shift it back. It's like some sort of poltergeist. It's my only explanation. Yeah, so another occurrence. This happened whenever I was in middle school, probably. But I was, as one does, doing a project at the last minute. I was supposed to be a full semester project, and I was up at maybe 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning doing this, listening to music with my earbuds in, and just laying on the floor. And our hallway, to give you perspective, it was probably like 8 feet long. Super short hallway, just connects the bathroom, the living room, and then the 2 bedrooms. But I could hear something or someone pacing outside of my bedroom door. So it sounded like they had wooden, like soled shoes, like wood on wood. That's exactly how it sounded. It was very hollow. But I hear this, and I'm like, is that my music? So I pause my music, and I hear this thing pacing, and it does it for about 30 seconds, and it stops. And, we always kept the bathroom light or the hallway light on, so I couldn't see any shadows of anything pacing. It was just the sound. I would have been able to see something interrupt the light underneath the door, but I didn't see that at all. So I'm like, okay, well, you know what? I'm just going to keep listening to my music. So I do this about 2 or 3 more times, and something is pacing outside the bedroom, and I pause my music, and it does it for about 30 seconds more, and then it stops. And by probably the 3rd or 4th time, it doesn't do it anymore. But it was just this one time. I never heard anything else pace in the hallway again. But my sister, on a separate occasion, had also heard that thing, or that something, pace outside of the bedroom. And there's not much room to pace, but we also didn't wear shoes inside the house, so wasn't anybody inside the house. And okay, reading my notes. Next story. So when I was in high school, my mom and my brother had left. Like my parents were getting a divorce, kind of left. So it was really just me and my sister in the house, and my dad started dating again. And he would on occasion, not, like, he would leave us at home some nights, and my sister and I get off the school bus. We're in the house. I'm in the living room. She's in the kitchen. She's preparing us a snack for after school. And the kitchen sink is about 10 feet away from where the oven is. And she's next to the oven putting something in it. And I'm in the living room. And the living room shares a wall with the kitchen. So I'm probably like 3 feet away from the kitchen door. And I just hear a clink on the floor. I take like 2 steps through the threshold of the door because I hear my sister call my name. And I look down at my feet, and there's a steak knife at my feet. And my sister, who's next to the oven, says it flew. It flew out of the sink. It flew from the sink across the kitchen. It had to have been 12 feet or something, like 12, 15 feet for it to hit that door threshold. But she was nowhere near the sink. There was literally no possible way that she could have gotten from the sink to the oven in the time that it took me to walk into the kitchen. But that at that time, we were getting really close to leaving the house, and I think that the house knew. It sounds weird, but my sister and I believe that the land itself is super haunted. We think that there's potentially like a curse on the land. So we think that because there have been a lot of deaths on that land, and they've typically been firstborn sons. My family has owned that land for 300 plus years or something. And in that time, we've known, 3 to 5 different males in the family have died on that land, or what we believe to be because of that land. There were a couple occasions whenever I was younger where my brother attempted to unalive himself, and my dad has also attempted that on that land. It's just really fucking haunted. And my brother is no longer with us, but I was in the hospital with my mom whenever he was in the hospital, and they were, doing everything they could to keep him alive. Pretty much, he was hit by a car. He was riding his bicycle, crossing the street, and got hit by a car. And he was in the hospital, and my mom was like, your brother went back home a couple weeks ago, and he broke into the old house so that he could get some of his stuff from the attic. And my first thought was, that fucking house got him. Like, if he had not gone back to that house, that would have never happened. Not saying that correlation equals causation, but my sister had the same thought whenever she learned that he went back to the house. I have suffered in my life from sleep paralysis quite a bit, especially whenever we live there. And the only time I get sleep paralysis now is whenever I have dreams about that house. And the only way that I can get out of it is if I say the Lord's Prayer during my dream. My sister has also had sleep paralysis whenever living in that house, but it is just, I if I could see anything happen in my lifetime, it would be seeing that house burn to the ground. I don't know that it would fix any of the problems or any of the curses that that land probably has, but it's just fucking evil, man.
Thank you, anonymous listener. We are surely not going to sleep well tonight. So, thanks for that. Thank you, everybody who contributed to this episode. We appreciate you all so much. Obviously, this episode couldn't be done without you. And those stories, these are the kind of things that capture our imagination. True crime is great, but that's kind of what the idea of the Chiller Chatters were, to get a break sometimes from that monotony and that pain that we experience. Looking at and studying and researching and talking about some of the most heinous crimes of all time. But we'll get back to that very soon. We actually have a Hella Greg hosted episode coming out next week with one of your favorite guests, B3R Bobby Roberts, and a new guest who some of you may know from the streaming game, Nero Ceza. So check it out next week. New game show episode coming out with Nero and Bobby. That is going to be a Hella Greg hosted episode. Thank you guys again for tuning in to Chiller Chatter 6. It has been a pleasure of mine to go through all these years with you guys. I can't wait to kind of cruise through 2024 here and see what comes of it. So thank you guys a lot. Remember, just check out serialchillerspod.com to check out anything about the show that you want. Otherwise, remember, don't talk to strangers. Bye-bye.